I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Okay, so just briefly, I have to say this. Back last week, 27th, 28th, I don't know exactly when it was, I broke the story about the Muncie Fire Department EMS chief, Wesley Miller, who also is the SWAT medic for the Muncie Police Department. And I broke the story about his domestic violence residential entry arrest. He'd actually been arrested. There was a warrant for his arrest. He turned himself in, and the preliminary charges were residential entry, a level 6 felony, and domestic battery, a level 6 felony. And we talked about all of that, and I broke the story and all of that. Then over the next couple of days, people were reaching out and saying some things. I was still getting some more information, and I had some information that was given to me the day that I broke the story, but I couldn't release it at that point. I needed to sit on it for a few days. And then Friday evening, I heard some other information. And so with the information that I had that I needed to sit on, once I heard the other information, I made a post. So the information that I got on Friday evening was that also, along with being the fire department EMS chief and the medic, SWAT medic for the police department, he's also been an instructor teaching an EMT class. And I was told originally when this all happened and he turned himself in, he obviously wasn't there to instruct the class. And I was originally told that the class was canceled and the students missed that night. And I now have found out that's not true. Another instructor filled in for him, so they didn't miss any class. Well, then I was told on Friday evening that he was back teaching Friday evening, and him teaching has nothing to do with his official capacity, and so he's off on paid leave, but he could still be the instructor. He still has the certifications, and, I don't think that had anything to do with it. Well, I had been told that he was making light of the situation and that he was joking about the domestic violence situation and or arrest in front of the class. And I was actually told that a student got up and left and was like all offended from this and, basically made a comment. I'm not going to be taught by somebody like this or whatever. So I made this post along with the other information that I had been given. And that other information I had been given was that when this all happened, he called his fire chief and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, this is what happened. I'd been arrested for this, this, and this. I'm going to resign." And the fire chief and him talked, and basically between the two of them made the determination that he was going to resign from the department. The fire chief pointed out that he is also underneath the police chief and that he should call and inform the police chief of this. And basically at the end of that conversation, he was going to resign. Then he called the police chief, and the police chief, rightly or wrongly, it is right. He is, no matter what we feel about him, right, wrong, or indifferent, he is, like everyone else, innocent until proven guilty. And the police chief told him, "You're innocent until proven guilty. Go through the process. Don't resign." And I know there are going to be people that are mad about that. I feel kind of some way about it. But at the end of the day,
what actual crime did he allegedly commit?
Residential entry, a felony, and domestic battery, a felony.
So
in the presence of a minor while he was also armed with a gun.
No one's worried that he could harm a student or a layperson, or maybe he's not stable.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. Oh yeah. And let me tell you, the reason that a lot of people thought that this had happened was because he has a history of past drug addiction, and he has cleaned his life up. That was long ago. He's got a second chance. A lot of people had thought that he had fallen off the wagon. Okay. So I put all of this information out. Well, soon after I put that information out, the people that gave me that original information about making jokes and about the person walking out got back in touch with me and was like, no, you can put out everything. Just remove that part about the guy walking out and about the jokes, And I was like, I don't really do that, because I asked you if I could put this out there and you told me yes, and I don't really understand what you're doing. So that gave me pause. So I did edit my post, but the post that I made, it went like this. For everyone who was running their mouths saying you don't know the full story about Wesley Miller, or wait until his side of the story is out, I want to fill those of you in on a couple of important details. When the political spotlight broke the story the other day, everything came out about it. Muncie Fire Department EMS chief and SWAT medic Wesley Miller contacted the chief of the fire department to tell him what had happened. Miller informed Burford, the fire chief, that the events that took place, and both of them discussed the possibility of Miller resigning from the fire department. MFD Chief Burford told Miller that he needed to contact the chief of the Muncie Police Department, Nathan Sloan, to fill him in on what happened and what he was planning to do. This made sense because Miller was the SWAT medic for the police department. However, when Miller contacted MPD Chief Sloan and told him the news, Chief Sloan told Miller, talked Miller out of resigning, which is kind of ridiculous to me. But at the time I was mad. Now I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. It is, let due process roll through, whatever. I don't think they should be necessarily paying him, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, Miller did not resign. He instead is now on paid leave pending the outcome of everything. Number 2, MFD EMS Chief Miller has been instructing new EMS and EMT recruits in Eaton for a while. They're near the end of their class. This was the other night. However, the other night when all of this happened, Miller was a no-show to the class, which meant the class was canceled that evening. However, last night, Friday, May 30th, 2025, Miller was back in front of the class of new recruits, and they were ready to learn. While in the class, in front of the new recruits, Miller made jokes about the domestic violence incident that landed his dumbass in jail. I don't understand making jokes about any part of what occurred. And just a quick word to Miller and or anyone else that needs to hear this. No one is forcing you into a life of public service. If you don't want your life or your words or your actions to be looked at, questioned, and or put on display, then maybe public service isn't really for you. So there you have it. First, Miller thought the incident was such a problem that he was going to resign. That says a lot. However, he didn't resign because he was talked out of doing so by MPD Chief Nate Sloan, which raises some questions. Then to hear that Miller is making light of the situation and making jokes about it, that tells me all I need to hear. I am sure there will be plenty more information to come. Stay tuned. Well, I want to tell you, since I put this out, I have heard from people that I absolutely trust implicitly. And they said, while everything else you've reported on is factually accurate, there are a couple of things that is not factually accurate. Number one, the class was not canceled when he wasn't there, which that's really not that big of a deal one way or another, but okay, that is there. Okay, that's good. So I'm clearing that record and clearing that up. Number 2, he did not, and I want to be very clear on this, and I'm going to change the post, but I wanted to say it on here for people to hear. And when we're wrong here, we admit that we're wrong. So I have no problem doing this. I talked to people that I absolutely implicitly trust and was told that he in no way made a joke while in front of the students instructing the students. And that was not happened, that he did not make light of this, and this did not happen. I was also told that what I was told originally, that a student got up and walked out of class and said, I'm not going to do this, that technically didn't happen that way. He had talked to another instructor earlier at some point or something like that, and he said, that instructor said, Wes is coming in here to help you guys, because their test was the next day, Saturday. And there were some issues. And that student said, well, I don't feel comfortable him coming in here. I don't want to be taught by a woman beater. And so that guy did make that statement and say it to this other instructor, but it wasn't like all badass. He like said it to Miller and walked out. And so there's some issues there. And so I just want to clarify that. And I also say, after I talk to those people that I trust, Miller actually reached out to me. And while I am at this point not going to read as I normally do his email to me. In his email, he was very like hat in hand. He wasn't like being an asshole. He wasn't like blah, blah, blah. He wanted to talk to me. And I got to be honest, normally when I will report on something like this and post this or whatever, those people don't ever reach out and talk to me. Even when I go out of my way to try to contact them, they blow me off and they won't talk. So the fact that he was willing to communicate with me, that kind of says a lot. Now, I'm not saying anything about the domestic battery. I'm not saying anything about the residential entry. I have the police reports. I think those happened, and it'll go through the process, and what'll happen is what'll happen. But the fact that he was willing to call me, and he told me, look, I cannot talk about the domestic violence. I cannot talk about the residential entry. I cannot talk about that case because I'm defending myself, and he's got an attorney, and, yada, yada, yada. He said, I just want to talk to you about, I am taking this very serious, and I did not make light of this. I wouldn't make light of it. He said, whatever's going on is going on in my life, and yada, yada, yada. He said, I want people to know, number one, I am not on drugs. I am not on drugs. Now, that's just him telling me that. I've got no way to know or true, if believe him or not, but he didn't sound like he was like all zonked out, on pills or whatever, or heroin or meth. So I will give him that. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything one way or another, but he did say that. And he did tell me, I've done what I've done, and I'll have to answer for that. He said, I'm not mad at you for reporting on the truth, but he said, I didn't make a joke about this situation. I wouldn't have talked to them about this. And so I do give him a little bit of credit for coming out and saying that. That's generally something that people would do. So I will give him a bit of credit for that. And he told me, and we'll see what happens, that after this goes through the process, that once they get discovery and that everything's there, he said he would give me copies of this. And once he's able to talk on the matter, he will talk on it. So, I said, okay, but I mean, it's not like I'm going to follow this whole situation. I'm not like a quote unquote crime reporter or whatever, but this was just something that had to do with more the fire department as a whole and that. But I do want to say that when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And apparently we got this wrong. And all that tells me is like the people that gave me that original information, I'll have to be careful with information from them in the future, which I will do. But we were wrong here. And, there's that's the deal. So I wanted to put that information out there and say that we were wrong. Now, that has nothing to do with breaking the news story or the domestic violence. All of that stuff, I completely stand on. Everything I've ever said about that, I stand on. And number two, the last thing I want to say about this, we also talked about this case as it relates to the other fireman that was arrested, Jordan Delaney, and how Miller was the John Doe in that situation. He was the person that was going between the person that was arrested and the victim. I at no point blamed Wes Miller for that. I believe that he was manipulated by Jordan Delaney just as the victim was manipulated. I don't put that on Miller. I say that was all on Jordan Delaney. And so I want to make that clear too. But other than that, we were wrong. And that's that. So we were wrong on a very small part of it. But I wanted to clarify that. And I will be clarifying the post after the show. So that's that. That's the end of that. And we can now, unless you have any other questions or comments, we can move on. All right, folks. You guys have a good evening. Have a great rest of your Sunday. It's almost over. Back to the work week tomorrow we go. Be here tomorrow at 9 p.m.
Smoke it if you got it, Jack.
Recover stuff. Oh, absolutely. Recover the shit that's going on during the day. Tune in at various points. We'll have stuff going on. Follow us. Hey, if you want to know what's going on before the show, you want to follow us on like the Facebooks and the Twitters and all that stuff, because I'm sure we'll put stuff in throughout the day. So just be watching. And then, of course, be back here tomorrow at 9 p.m. and we'll keep you posted. All right, you guys take care. God bless. Have a good evening. We will talk to you again real soon. Goodbye.
Baby, you better believe I'm back.